Alright guys, so this has been my first video. So I've just put together a quick presentation on macronutrients. I'm going to talk about each one, how much you should be taking for the average person and for someone who's training, and a little bit about each to hopefully give a little bit more sort of useful information that people can implement. Okay, first will be protein. Okay, so protein first. We've got a basic chart here showing protein at minimum recommended amounts for, say, the average person who's not taking in exercise to maintain health. And we've also got for people partaking in training as well, because you'll notice a bit of a difference. So I'm using 80 kilogram person as a baseline here just to make it easy. Recommended 1 gram per kilogram of body weight protein per day. So for the 80 kilogram person, that's 1 gram per day. Now, if you're taking part in a lot of training, you might want to increase that. In fact, you should increase that. That should be between 1.4 and 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So at the top end of that scale, the 80 kilogram individual will max out at about 160 grams of protein a day. You can go above this. There's nothing particularly wrong with that, but there are diminished returns beyond a certain point. So it just turns into calories then, really. It's not doing anything extra at a certain stage. So protein, as I'm sure everyone already knows, is the growth and repair nutrient, basically. So whatever protein you eat is made up of amino acids. Some protein sources have different combinations and different amounts of each amino acid. Okay, we can break that down in a new video because that's quite a complicated topic. But protein will contribute towards your growth and repair. Okay, so every time you train, you go for a run, you injure yourself, no matter what it is, protein is required for any kind of healing, growth and repair. So it is an essential nutrient regardless of if you're training or if you're just wanting to be healthy in general. A caveat about taking higher levels of protein than needed. A benefit actually usually is around the thermic effect of food. That basically means how much energy does it take your body to digest the food that you eat. Protein requires a lot of energy for your body to break down. It takes a lot of work for your digestive system to break down protein. It's not easy. So there are benefits to having a high protein diet for weight loss as long as the rest of your diet is good and you're under your calorie maintenance as well. But it is a beneficial strategy for some people to use. Okay, next we'll go on to fats. All right, so fats now. So we've got basic recommendations for fats showing on the screen here. So to get right into it, make it simple. Look at your calorie intake. So we've got this baseline individual here who is 80 kilograms and takes in 2,000 calories a day, just as a random example. So fats should make up between 20 and 35% of your calorie intake. So whatever your calorie intake is, just have 20 to 35% of that be fats. It doesn't matter where in that range you sit. That's going to be personal preference and based on your own individual situation. So for this individual, for example, you've got 45 to 78 grams of fat, which is this person's healthy range. The interesting thing about fats is the recommendation doesn't really change much for people who are training, unlike protein and carbohydrates. So this stays relatively static. The only reason that this would need to change drastically is for someone who wanted to do a zero carbohydrate diet. And obviously you need to make up the calories somewhere. So those are going to be made up predominantly with fats and protein. But fats are a very energy dense food. So that will be the best way of doing it for that person. A quick note on fats before we move on to carbohydrates. So it matters where you get your fats from, as it does with all of your nutrients. So if you get most of your fats from fish, nuts, seeds, olive oil, some sources of saturated fat to some degree are not bad universally, but we do need to be careful with those. Omega-3, omega-6 fatty acids. These are polyunsaturated fats and they are good for you and they are essential for so many aspects of your functioning, immunity, brain functioning, inflammation management. So these are really important nutrients. So make sure you get enough of them. And if you get them from natural sources and you stick to those recommendations I've just shown you, you'll get enough fatty acids and fats to make you nice and healthy. Okay, so for carbohydrates, we have a bit of a different situation. These differ depending on if you're just the average person or if you're doing a lot of training. We generally say between 45 and 65% of calories should come from carbohydrates. So for this 80 kilogram person on a 2,000 calorie diet placeholder we're using here, we're looking at 225 to 325 grams of carbohydrates for that individual. So that's obviously much higher than fats and a little bit higher than protein. And the reason for that is carbohydrates are the main energy source for the human body. Okay, we can use fat as energy, and we do use fat as energy, but in terms of training, carbohydrates are going to be broken down into sugar really quickly and used as energy. Your body breaks down whatever carbohydrate you intake, takes that through your digestive system. Depending on how complex it is, it has to break that down, and it breaks it down into glucose, which can then be used as energy by your cells, by your muscles, for your exercise. So for carbohydrates, like everything else, it matters where you get them from. So table sugar and bags of sweets, chocolate bars, these are not good sources of carbohydrates, and they're full of processed sugar, and they are basically empty calories with very little nutritional value. But they are carbohydrates to some extent, apart from the obvious fat and other content that's in them. But on the other hand, rice, various types of beans, pulses, grains, oats, all these things are carbohydrate sources. They're very healthy. They contain a lot of fibre. They're lower on the glycemic index scale, which basically explains how quickly a carbohydrate raises your blood sugar. We'll go into that in a different video. But the more of your carbohydrates you can get from whole foods, so basically things that grow, the better, because they'll contain a lot of extra nutrition to go along with that, and they won't leave you having highs and lows in your blood sugar, which can trigger an increase in appetite, make you feel hungry, make you feel just generally a bit rubbish, to be honest. So yeah, this is a bit of a demonized nutrient like fat is, but we need carbohydrates. Really, we function best when we take carbohydrates. I know people will probably have different opinions on that, but it's been shown time and time again that humans taking carbohydrates and use them most efficiently as an energy source out of literally anything. Okay, so on training, just adjust this depending on your training load. So if you're a marathon runner, you're going to be over 65% of your calories in carbohydrates, particularly in the lead up to that. So just be smart and intelligent about how you consume carbs. All right, finally, we got a food pyramid. So I shared this on my page the other day, but this is basically just to show you the hierarchy of like calories consumed. Again, we're looking at 2,000 calories a day, just as an example. So take a picture of it, look at your calorie intake, look at what you're eating, and sort of compare it to this. And if it's close to that, then it's fine. This pyramid is also good because it shows you a bit more about a range of intake, which the graphs didn't necessarily show. So hopefully that's helpful. The last thing is, someone is definitely going to ask, why does the fat come below the protein? Above the protein in terms of how much you take in, even though you take in more protein, or you should be. And the reason is because fat per gram is 9 calories and protein is only 4. So it's more than double. So every time you eat a gram of fat, that's more than double the calories than what you would eat in protein or carbohydrates. That's why it doesn't take much for fat intake to bump you up in terms of calories, which is why it's in the middle of the pyramid. Okay, so this is literally my first video, so I hope the presentation has been interesting. Give comments, give me feedback. Yeah, nice to hear from everybody.